What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to Around the Burgh. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf. We're here with our preview of the Steelers' Week 8 road matchup against the Cleveland Browns. I'll introduce my co-host, Shayne Kubis. Shayne, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Looking forward to a big game here between, weirdly enough, the two worst teams in the division so far, which I think we weren't exactly expecting to see. So we'll get into that.
Yeah, this is a big matchup, and I think we kind of anticipated being a big game for the Steelers going into the
Mm-hmm.
season, but at this point where we stand now, I think it's arguably takes on even more significance. But before we jump into the full preview, we'll discuss some of the news from the Steelers week. So the big one was we talked about this with Chris Carter on our last episode about
Yeah.
Tomlin's connection with the USC and or the LSU jobs, and of course Tomlin. Actually, I guess it's pretty surprising that Tomlin actually addressed it the way he did.
Yeah, the way he did specifically. Yeah.
Right, because one would think that Tom would just be like, "I'm not discussing this," but some people are like, "Oh, he's not discussing it because he's interested." So he put that to rest with a pretty viral press conference where he said, "Never say never, but never," and
Right.
no booster's bag is big enough or something.
They said that I
Blank
think it's
check,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't. That no booster has a blank check big enough for him. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, makes sense.
To which I say, like, kudos to him. Like, that is some great self confidence that you love to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like I expected him to have to address it at some point, obviously,
Mhm.
but I think that it's telling that he decided to address it the way he did because he could have easily done what he would normally do and just say we're not discussing that, right?
Mhm.
We're on to Cleveland or whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
and he decides to kind of make sure that everyone is very much aware that like this is not something that we need to be talking about,
Right.
which I appreciate, but also I know people are still going to probably talk about it because it's what they do, but.
Yeah, now there's kind of discussion like, did he go too far, like by going this stuff? I saw one person's take that said, I'm kind of frustrated that Mike Tomlin didn't have this same vitriol for Ben Roethlisberger's past, what's the word? Transgressions.
Yeah.
Then they said for Mason Rudolph's transgressions, like, well, technically Mason Rudolph didn't do anything wrong as far as we know, for what it's worth.
I mean, we don't obviously officially
Officially.
speaking. I mean, granted, there obviously that whole situation that everyone knows we're talking about is just so weird that I don't really know what to think about it anymore.
And even if like something happened that we think happened but didn't,
yeah,
like Tomlin was led to believe that nothing was said, and I think he was on like first take, and he made that very clear. He's like, "What I've been told, there's nothing happened. I believe our quarterback," and so
he has to. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
regardless of what happened, he can't just assume what he hasn't been told is true when he's being told it. Like that just doesn't make sense for him to do that. So
that's a pretty big digression we want to. But anyways, yeah, I mean, this makes all the sense in the world that he would shoot all this down. And again, like I looked it up, like he hasn't coached college since the year 2000,
right?
And so like college game, I mean football in general, but even the college game has changed so much. And one could argue it's gotten closer to being a professional game, but still, like,
yeah, it's still. It's a whole different ball game for sure.
Is Mike Tomlin's like is he gonna want to like recruit kids? No, I don't. That doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense to me from the beginning. And I mean, Chris had the great response where I couldn't even get the question out, where he was like, "No,
no, it's not." I mean, just like you said, from a sensical standpoint, he brought up. He's like, it's one of the best jobs in the sport, in not only this sport but sports in general.
I was gonna say it's probably a top 5 job in sports. Period.
It has
in terms of job security.
Job security, the accolades you can get there with the type of infrastructure we've built over time with this organization, just the notoriety of the position. Like he's not going to be he's going to be the coach of this team until he either they don't want him to be or he is done coaching. Like that's what's going to happen. He's not going to willingly leave this position for anything. I imagine. Like there's just no way.
Yeah, I fully agree.
So
like Tom, we'll move past that pretty quickly. So some roster news. So both Anthony McFarland and Zach Banner are fully off IR, and they both returned to full practice this week. So I think we could see them both play. I'm not sure if that'll happen. And if they do, probably for McFarland more so in limited doses. Maybe Banner will get out there on special teams just to kind of ease him into it, given that the offensive line, like we talked about in previous episodes, has been gaining that chemistry. So the other thing is that Carlos Davis is going to IR, which makes sense. He's missed the last few weeks. But I think that move might precipitate kind of like what we talked about was a possible move at defensive line going forward.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if they do make an actual like legitimate addition to the defensive line and not just move guys around, because if Davis is going to be gone for at least those 3 weeks, which I assume, I mean, obviously he will be no matter what, but he might be gone longer than that. Who knows?
Yeah.
If they're going to open up that spot, then I imagine they're going to try to fill that with someone at the position. So
yeah, because at this point they are down to basically their, second string, but that was already a rotation nose tackle with
right,
Bugs playing there. Maybe you rotate Wormley in there a bit, so that's definitely a position of weakness. And with
yeah,
some teams that have pretty strong running attacks, especially this week, moving forward, they need to address that position. The last thing came up today, and we're recording on Thursday. And I kind of missed it because I was at work, and then I was like, "Oh, this
yeah.
is interesting." But Melvin Ingram, who signed to the Steelers this offseason, is basically it seems he's requested a trade. I'm not sure how official that is. Because the Steelers have had some trade requests in the past and they're been unsubstantiated. But the big impetus behind said trade request is his decrease in playing time, specifically against Seattle, where I think he played 26% of the snaps, down
Something like
from
that. Yeah.
playing about half or about 60% of the snaps in previous weeks. So Shane, what do you make of this request? And do you think the Steelers will acquiesce to it, or will they kind of say tough it out?
I mean, it's tough because this does seem to be much more of a legitimate request than the Washington situation was.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have heard from several different sources that he has officially requested a trade, and
Mm-hmm.
apparently there's some smoke with the Chiefs apparently, and then they
Mm-hmm.
decided they didn't want to go send him to the AFC, so they're
Yeah.
looking at NFC suitors. Not sure who that would end up being, but I think that it really just kind of comes down to, are they willing to move him, and what are they willing to move him for? Like, anything they get for him is technically going to be surplus because they just signed him out of free agency. So there's that benefit. But right now, the depth defense in general right now is not in a position where I'm sending a guy like him away unless he refuses to play, or
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to use him at all, then fine, try to get something for him. But I think that ultimately, if I'm the defensive coaching staff, I find ways to get him on the field enough to make him happy, even if that's
Mm-hmm.
with Highsmith playing really well, and try to find places for him to play,
Mm-hmm.
even if maybe that means using TJ more, that kind of like middle field role.
Yeah.
He's shooting gaps and stuff like that. Whatever it takes to get him on the field, I think.
Yeah.
If it makes him happy, he's not going to hurt us being on the field. Let me put it that way. So
No, that's the thing is, like, he has played, and I think that, like, so on one hand it makes sense because he is a veteran player.
right,
He's still quite good, and he has played well in previous weeks. But I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying like, okay, so Melvin Ingram is angry that he is doing exactly what the Steelers told him they were going to do. Basically, as being
right,
that third outside linebacker is kind
yeah,
of a rotational player. And I'm sure that he was told and probably thought that he would be kind of in more of a realistic split or rotation with Highsmith, and that just didn't come to fruition against the Seahawks. So
right,
I can understand being bitter about that. I also think getting on him for that is a little unfair, given that
right.
it was such a drastic reduction in snaps. And obviously Tomlin has that quote from a few years ago where he said, "We want volunteers, not hostages."
Yeah, a lot of
Um,
people brought that up during this
yeah,
whole thing. Yeah, so
so that is relevant, but I definitely agree with you that depth there is concerning. Like, we saw what happened when TJ and Alex were both down, and they had to play Derek Tuska and some other people who I don't remember are on the team.
yeah, like I don't want to have to see Taco Charlton play
Taco,
50%
yeah,
of the
to elevate
snaps. Like,
Taco, yeah, that would be
I
bad.
don't need to see that. So it's
Yeah,
tough because, I mean, if someone offers us a legitimate like higher end top 3 pick, anything like that, that was my camera. Yeah.
okay.
Oh.
All right, so there. Oh, almost. We're having some technical difficulties here,
Oh,
folks.
yeah, they don't. People don't need to see me anyway. I'm not really that interested to look at. Let me
Now
see.
your audio is a little. Oh, okay. I was gonna say your audio is a little weird.
What's up, folks?
Now you're good. Now the audio is there. All right, we're good. But yeah, so I think those backup players, we don't really want to see as much of them. So hopefully they get this result. I'm sure that he'll get some more playing time in the future, just because he is like a good player and they can use him in a lot of ways. So with that, we are going to move on to the actual game preview. So the game is, there we go. We're all set here. It's a Sunday at 1 p.m. I think they drew Nance and Romo again, which will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they're a fun group. I mean, Romo's kind of gotten this. Oh man, I mean, Tony's one of he's gotten this reputation of he's just gonna tell us what exactly is happening all the time, and I'm like, I don't really need that at this point, but it's fun for the most part. So
yeah, I think Romo's kind of like, obviously had the big like glow up when he kind of first started and everybody was
because
going
he's so
nuts.
different,
and then everybody kind of cooled off because of the afro demonstrated noises that he makes sometimes. And I think sometimes when they get on duds of a game, Like him trying to banter with Nance
it's just
it's a
not.
little odd, but
Yeah, it's not great, honestly.
yeah.
Like in big games or great games, they do pretty well,
Yes.
I think,
Yes.
obviously.
I
But
definitely agree with that.
it's just, yeah, you have to be able to, like, especially in the NFL sometimes, like, you get some of these dud matchups that
Hmm.
occasionally happen, or just teams that just should not be on the same field as each other. Like, I couldn't imagine trying to commentate like the Texans Cardinals game last week, like
Yeah.
where
Or
they
the
score 5 points.
Patriots Jets.
Oh well, yeah, that's, I mean, that's just
Yeah.
because Jets just I don't even want to look at them right now.
That's like my Madden scores when I play. Just
Oh my
like
goodness, yeah,
um
exactly.
but returning this game, so the Steelers have not won in Cleveland since 2017, which
Crazy to think, right?
yeah, because I think the streak of them winning in Cleveland, I mean, up until I think midway through last season, Ben Roethlisberger was still the winningest quarterback at the
Yeah,
Browns
yeah,
stadium since they came back to life.
yeah. He brought that up in the press conference this week.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I was like, Ben, I don't know if if you're in a position you want to say that right now,
I mean, I'm
but
fine
we'll
with it.
talk about it. We'll talk
So
about
the other fun stats involve bye weeks. So currently the Steelers are on a 4-game win streak off of their bye. They're 3-0 against Cleveland off of the bye since 2002, and Mike Tomlin is 10-4 off the bye in his career. So based on all those streaks, this is looking pretty good for the Steelers, especially with the Browns injuries, which we'll get into
it.
later. But the other thing is, this Browns also technically have had a long week since they had a Thursday night matchup last week, so they've had
Yeah,
an extra day or so. But obviously, Steelers have had 2 weeks since they played, so that's
yeah,
different. But like I said, the Browns are extremely injured. They're pretty banged up at running back. I think Chubb might be back this week.
yeah,
Their wide receiver core is very in flux, to say the least.
yeah.
So I don't really know what's going on there. Like, I feel like anybody could be playing and everybody could not be playing. Very odd. I think their offensive line's getting healthy. I think both their defensive tackles might be hurt, and
I think so. Yeah.
I think they've had some secondary injuries. But I think some people are starting to come back to health. So, and then obviously there's Baker Mayfield injury,
Which
which will
at this
be
point, it's pretty much just, as far as I understand, like, it's going to be like a week to week thing, whether or not he's, how healthy is he? It's not really going to be, is he healthy, but is he 90%? Is he 80%? And honestly, I think that the problem that they're going to have with him is, if he can't deliver the big throws that Keenum can't, how much of a difference is it between him and Keenum?
mhm,
Because like Mayfield has way more arm talent, he's definitely got a lot more just dynamic parts of his game. But if
mobility.
he
Yeah.
is injured and he's not able to do those things,
Hmm.
it's not really. I don't know how much it matters whether he's in or not. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it's tough for them to figure that out.
Yeah, because obviously, like the last few weeks since Baker really sustained that injury, the Browns' offense has been quite inconsistent.
Yeah,
Mayfield has been inconsistent himself. So, and I mean the other side of the coin is that this is an extremely important matchup for the Browns. You know, they've had some struggles as of late. They need to get. I mean, I guess they won last week, but they need to kind of get stuff going. This is a divisional game, obviously. So, they might be like, okay, Baker, you need to tough this. And obviously, like he's a pretty tough player, so you have
oh
to
for
gut this
sure.
one out and take it. So we'll see what's going on there. And Steelers, luckily, are pretty healthy at this point. And they only had
Yeah,
3 players that were limited in practice that today or yesterday, which were Ben, Claypool, and Ingram. And I don't even think Ben technically had his off day on Wednesday, so everybody's good to go, which will be nice. Aside from the guys on IR,
right.
obviously. Um, so what are you looking at in terms of like matchups or trends for either team in this game?
Like I said, I really want to see, how much of the passing game do the Browns really have and can get going,
Hmm.
because if they can't get the downfield passing going, whether it's because the pass rush for the Steelers is able to get to Mayfield, or if Mayfield just doesn't have it right now with his
Hmm.
injury, it's going to limit what they can do off of play action with the running game, all that stuff. And that's really where they can hurt us, is if they can get the running game going and then beat us with the play action game.
Hmm.
That's when it can really start to get out of hand for the defense. But if they can't get that impact from the play action off of their run game, we might be able to survive them having a good day on the ground, and without it being a big deal at the end of the day.
Right. So I'll kind of highlight the other side of that in that
Yeah,
I'm probably most concerned about the run game because obviously the Seahawks had those 2 drives where they really just rammed it
yeah,
down the Steelers' throats using a pretty simple run scheme and they just kept
right.
spamming it. And the Browns do some of that stuff, but their offensive line is obviously significantly better.
Yeah,
If Chubb plays, he's one of the best running backs in the league.
right.
And like we said, the Steelers have some issues on the defensive line aside from Cam Hayward. So my biggest issue is the running game and like how the Browns offensive line fares against Steelers defensive line, in that I think that if they are running the ball well, then they'll kind of be able to just lean on that, and they don't really have to even go to the pass as much.
Right.
So, and if the Steelers, I want the Browns to have to throw. Like
I do too. Like if they
right.
have to, because ultimately I think we can survive them having a good rushing day as long as it's not a dominant rushing day.
Okay.
Because
Sure.
the fact that if we can limit the play action, limit some of the bigger plays in the pass game, I think we can maybe get a couple chances to get them off the field if they're not running it dominantly. But like you said, you're right. If they can just do what the Seahawks did, anything like that, a couple drives doing that's all they're going to need to do to probably get a lead where we're going to have to start throwing the football instead of trying to lean on Harris, which is what we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, we've pretty much seen the last few weeks that if you can get 3 touchdowns, you'll probably beat the
You're
Steelers.
probably in good. You're probably in a good spot. Yeah. So.
Yeah, exactly. So the other on the other side of the ball, because we kind of just talked about how the whole Browns offense there, but I think I think parts of this match up pretty well for the Steelers in terms of the Browns having a pretty suspect linebacking core, especially now that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is probably out.
That's big. Yeah.
I think some of their corners are still banged up, so I'm not sure exactly who's playing there.
Yeah.
But aside from Denzel Ward, I would feel like the Steelers have the advantage there. But the Browns have excellent safeties, and their defensive line, if even not healthy, their edge rushers are quite good. So mainly, I'm worried about Myles Garrett versus Dan Moore.
That's the reason why we can't allow ourselves to get down a couple scores at any point, because if we have to have Ben drop back and actually make plays from the pocket consistently, I just don't know if I can trust the tackles to keep those guys at bay. Because Ben, he gets some of the sacks that he's taken with and then fumbling too. Like I do not need to see Myles Garrett force like 2 or 3 fumbles on him from blindside hits. Like we need to make sure that we can rely on the running game to take pressure off of him a little bit and take pressure off the tackles, and at least make Garrett not be able just to go right up the field every play and not have to worry about a run going to his side behind, on the backside of him or anything.
Right. I mean, we've seen Dan Moore, he's had, like we said, like he's looked like a professional football player out there. Like he hasn't been embarrassed, but
Exactly.
Darrell Taylor got him a few times. And if Darrell Taylor's getting used sometimes, I mean, Myles Garrett might make him look like he doesn't belong in the NFL
right.
field.
And he does that. He's done that to a lot of guys. So if that
Exactly.
happens, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe Dan Moore didn't shut down.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Myles Garrett. But I want to give him the chance to actually have a fighting shot. Right. Like I don't want him to have to be on an island 10, 15 times against him without having any help or without the threat of the run game being there. So to at least give Garrett that false step of like, okay, I might have to crash back inside or whatever. That part we have to make sure, especially with their defensive tackles hurt, that needs to be the strategy. Really, probably almost every game with the way things are going, but especially against a team that has the edge rush talent like they do. Do not let them just tee off on Ben and expect the pass game so much.
Yeah, I think luckily, at least in the run game, the guys who are hurt are on the other side of Garrett, so they'll probably run most of their runs that way, just to run away from Garrett, because kind of like what the Seahawks did with regards to Cam Hayward. And then, so the other matchup that I highlighted was Ben Roethlisberger versus the middle of the field.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest fight every week, it seems like, between him and the Chiefs.
Right. And then with I'll just go back to the other matchup real quick because it'll play into this one, is that I think they'll probably just try to keep at least a tight end in to help more. So whether that's Freiermuth or Zach Gentry, who's been pretty solid, very good as a blocker, solid overall player. But then that kind of factors into like having Ben attack the middle of the field, because like we said, these linebackers are pretty suspect in coverage. So this is again another unit where if Ben wants to target the intermediate areas of the field, I think this is a team that he can do it against, especially if you are able to kind of, I mean, those safeties are going to be playing back. Normally in their defense, they want to play back, but I think most teams, they'll kind of come up and play in single high because they don't fear the Steelers throwing deep on them.
Yeah, it's just tough because like I want to be able to try to create a couple big plays, especially with the corner issues, like you said. Depending on who's actually out there, no matter, even with Greg Ward out there, like if he follows Johnson, I'm still confident Johnson can get a couple plays on him because we've seen him do it to Alexander in the Packers game. So it's not like he can't beat those lead corners, but if we can get a couple deep shots, especially like I want to see a couple seam balls, man.
Yeah, we talked about last time.
Like we got, like I don't care. Like run Chase down the middle of the field. He doesn't even have to run anything spectacular. Doesn't have to put him, like just have him run straight down the middle of the field and see if they actually can cover him. Like obviously the safeties are good there, so they probably can do that. But he's a better athlete than anybody they have in the secondary, other than maybe Ward. And Williams is a good athlete too, but he's going to be able to get a couple things down the seam, and Ben has to be willing to look there, and they have to be willing to run stuff there.
Absolutely. All right. So with that, we will get into our actual predictions. So as of right now, The Browns are favored by 3.5, and the over/under is 42. So we're looking at about
Like
22 to 19
something like
ish,
that. Yeah, in
22
that
to
range.
21 to 18, something like that. So Shane, what are you predicting for the score for this game?
I think it's tough because the over under for this, like, I definitely think the under is definitely very possible because
Mm,
both teams with the Steelers just lack of explosive on offense this year, and then the Browns just have injuries everywhere.
hmm
Two really good pass rushers, especially. I could see this becoming like a 17-14 type of
hmm
thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to say 2017 Steelers. I think we,
Okay.
we get in position for a field goal at the end, have the ball last, and let Boswell, continue to be the best kicker not named Justin Tucker in the NFL.
I mean, I'll say this, but this is not good based on your prediction record. If you're
Oh, I
predicting a
know.
win,
I mean, at this
all
point,
right,
though, like,
okay,
it is what it is. I mean,
okay,
obviously, I don't think it doesn't matter too much. At the end of
yeah,
the day.
yeah. The thing that you kind of touched on is that like the Browns defense has been a little weird this season because
Yeah,
they've played well against bad
bad offenses.
offenses
Yeah,
and then terribly against good. And I think the Steelers, everybody would admit, they fit into the bad offense category.
for sure. Yeah.
So, but those are kind of confounding variables. But so we'll see. But I have a similar score. I have a little higher. I'll say Steelers 24, Browns 20. So I have the over. But yeah, I think kind of a similar situation. Maybe Steelers have a touchdown, Browns are driving late, and they needed the touchdown, just can't get it.
Right.
So I'm feeling pretty hopeful about this because I do think that the Steelers are going to be pretty motivated for this game, given how bad last season went. Their last two games against the Browns, their last two games of the 2020 season. So I think they're going to want a modicum of revenge, and I think that the Browns' injuries might just be too much for them to overcome.
I think that especially for this game, like, I know when we did our predictions, I think we had a splitting with them. The home
hmm
game we win, the road game we lose. But because of the injuries and because I think that the Steelers obviously they're getting healthier, at
hmm
least where I'm interested to see does McFarland have any impact in this game? Do they get him out there with Harris?
hmm
Does Banner get any chances on the line? Does maybe they bring him in for a couple heavy packages or
Yeah,
something?
that'd be good.
That type of thing.
hmm
I do hope to see them both have some sort of impact, so we at least get to see, are they ready to go, or is this more of kind of a week to week thing with them? So definitely interested to see how it all plays out with that.
Maybe we get Zach Banner on a Matt Canada jet sweep.
Exactly, that's
They'll never
perfectly
see
fine.
that coming.
They won't. And honestly, I mean, they might be like, you know what? I don't want to tackle him. He's
Yeah.
like 370 pounds. Like I'm good. Like they can get the 4 yards until he falls. Like so,
All right,
but
that'll do it for us. A nice little short episode for this game
mhm.
preview. But Shane, let people know where they can find your work.
So you can find me at Shane Kubis on Twitter, like always. I could find my writing stuff, which has been kind of dialed back. I'm pretty busy right now at work in the insurance business. This is a busy time of year. So
Mhm.
hopefully some stuff written over at Still Curtain. And then obviously you can always find us here at the podcast. So
All right, sounds good. And I'm at Mitchell T Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter. Yeah, just make sure you're following us. Follow Steelers ATP. Follow Around the Block in general. We thank you for listening, and we hope to have you back next time.